Welcome everyone to our program tonight. This is the first in a series of programs called Genealogy Academy. Tonight, we're going to look at the Genealogy or the Ancestry Library Edition. Our future academies will be Family Search, free genealogy websites, and newspapers. We'll have more about that later if you'd like to sign up for those. But for now, let's get started. As I mentioned, this is Ancestry Library Edition, and you're probably familiar with the fact that there is an Ancestry.com. There is a difference between Ancestry.com and Ancestry Library Edition, so let's talk about those before we get started, because then you'll know what we're talking about here in our presentation tonight. Ancestry.com is designed for individuals, and it gives the people who have subscribed to it opportunities for collaborating and connecting with other subscribers. Ancestry Library Edition, on the other hand, is designed for institutions and multiple users. The difference there is that individuals can put up information about their family tree, about themselves, DNA, and can connect with other people that way. Ancestry Library Edition does not allow you to put any personal information onto their Ancestry program. Ancestry.com is a subscription service, and there are different levels at which you can subscribe. Ancestry Library Edition is also subscription, but the subscription is paid for by the library, so it's free for you to use with your library card. Actually, it's free for you to use in the library. There was a time during the pandemic when Ancestry made this available to people at home, but since things are opening up more now, it is only available within the library. That being said, there are quite a few resources in Ancestry Library Edition, most of which we'll talk about tonight. The biggest and best, I would say, is the availability of the United States Census, although there are some other censuses from other countries available as well. Passenger lists, passport applications, and naturalization records are a good category to use for researching your immigrant ancestor. They have Ancestry Library Edition has some military records pertaining to World War I, which would be the draft registration cards, and World War II. There are also draft registration cards for World War II, as well as Army enlistment records and other things as well, which again, we'll talk about in a few minutes. Ancestry Library Edition has city directories, yearbooks, photographs, public trees. So there is a lot that's available to you for using the library subscription. Just as a reminder of our genealogy procedures here, I want to make sure that before you get started, especially using Ancestry Library Edition, you want to make sure you know what you know and interview those family members and search through your home sources. So you've kind of done your due diligence with your non-computerized genealogy searching and research. Then once you start before you start Ancestry Library Edition, have a goal in mind. I'm here to tell you that because of all those researches on there, it's all those databases and resources, it's very easy to get distracted. There's lots of squirrels and bright shiny objects. So try to have a goal in mind to keep you focused on what you're looking for. Finally, this is the library's website, www.cooklib.org, and I'm going to click on that and get us started with how you would access Ancestry Library Edition once you are in the library. Go to the Research tab, which is right here. I hope you can see me pointing to it. And when you click on that, you will be directed to databases, which you can find Ancestry Library Edition here, or the Genealogy page, which has a lot of information. If you just click on the databases group right here, Genealogy databases will open up to you, and here's the Ancestry Library Edition. If you were in the library, you would need to, no, you wouldn't. You would just click on this and away you go. So this is it. This is your gateway to all kinds of wonderful library genealogy resources within Ancestry Library Edition. As with most things, there's more than one way to search, but let's just take a look at the front page here, kind of get acclimated to what's there. First, across the top, there's this black bar, which has a home button, a search button, a place for message boards, Learning Center, charts and forms, and new collections. Then there's this middle part here that says begin searching. And to the right of that are some census records where you could click directly into a census. Beneath that are some boxes with different types of record groups. There's a census box, which lets you search the United States federal census, as well as leading you to other things. There's a box for searching vital records, military records, and immigration records. And then at the bottom, there's a bunch of quick links. It's kind of popular things that people might want to search a lot, like public trees, pictures, city directories, newspaper obituaries, schools, directories, church histories, and more. A lot to choose from. Where do you start? Well, start at the very beginning. One more bit of information about these at the top. The message boards are something that used to be used a lot on Ancestry. People could put out a message if they were looking for something or had something to share. I don't know that it's particularly active anymore, but they are available to search. So you could put in your ancestor or a topic and see what kinds of things people have been looking for. Usually there is a email that you can contact a person if you find anything. It's always good to know that there's a learning center and ways to learn more. So if you get stuck or want to maybe see if you can find out anything new, take a look at some of these bits and pieces of how to get, as it says, how to get your research moving again. It might kind of help you or give you some new ideas of where to go, including this ethnic grouping down here. Tonight, we're not going to talk too much about that, but there are a lot of international records on Ancestry Library Edition, and this would be a good place to find out about how to use those records. Next are the charts and forms, which I try to encourage people to use. I know a lot of us use software, but sometimes a paper copy of something and the act of writing it down can slow us down enough to help us understand what we found or what is missing. So especially the ancestral chart and the family group sheet, I encourage people to use, as well as using a research calendar or keeping track of people that you've emailed or corresponded with. And also there's a list of census forms here where you can find a blank census form and easily read what questions were asked, as well as if you really need to drill down, you can transcribe what you see on a census page into that particular census year. And finally, there's a section here on new collections, which we'll get to later, so I'll just leave that for you for now. Let's go back to the home page. And we'll start with the search. I'm going to go into the big search box here and hit begin searching. The search up here on the top also has a drop-down menu with different kinds of things that you search. But if you click on search all collections, you'll get this same search box. So I'm going to do a few sample searches here. first one, we're going to search for information on my great-grandfather, Eric Falk. He lived in Aurora, Illinois, in Kane County. And I'd also, ancestry tip here, always use the format that they suggest. So if you start typing, you'll notice that when I started typing, it gave me all kinds of different Auroras. I choose the one that was in Kane County and clicked on that. So that populates the box here and it helps the search do a better job. I don't know when my great-grandfather was born, but I do know some other things about him. So I'm going to click on this right here that says search more options. I don't know when he was born, but I do know that he was born in Sweden. So I'll start typing Sweden and just click on that to populate that. I also know the name of his wife, which was Helen. So I'm going to put that in too. That should give me some good information. Let's see what comes up. All results for Eric Falk. This is where on the right-hand side, you get your results. 70,000 of them to be exact, and it's giving me the first 20. You'll be relieved to know that we're not going to go through all 70 of these right now, but I do want to click on this first one here, Eric Gustav Falk. This was a person born in Sweden. He lived in Aurora in Kane County, and that looks to be close to mine. Now, when I click on this, it takes me to another website or opens up a new page that gives me some detail about Eric Falk from the site called Find a Grave. There's a picture of his gravestone here, which is from the website. And down at the bottom, there's a URL, which if I click on that, will take me to the Find a Grave site and out of Ancestry. And I think it will also give you a little notification that you're leaving Ancestry. I just wanted to kind of show you what that brings up, and also point out that if you find something on Ancestry Library Edition that is helpful to you, even though you can't make a family tree to save it to, there's a way to send your find home, it says, and send the document. So when you click on this, it will have you put in your email twice and send the email to yourself. You'll get a note in your email that says Ancestry found something for you, and it will have a link to this information. I also want to point out that even though Ancestry Library Edition doesn't have those shaky leaves like Ancestry.com does, it does give you a lot of hints. And you'll notice on the right-hand side here, they have suggested records with from the Evangelical Lutheran Church, some census records, even some records from Sweden. This can be very helpful, and I found them to be quite good. I'm going to show you what I like to do when I find a hint like this. So that I don't lose my place in Ancestry, I find it helpful to open this up in another tab by right-clicking. So when I do this, I think you'll be able to see here on my tab here that I've opened a new tab, even though I'm still on the page that I was. Now I can click on this and look at Ancestry's note from the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America records. There are two parts to this. One part is kind of a record description or some abstracts of what is in the record. His name, his gender, the age he was married at, his birth date, which is something I didn't know before. That's the 1872, so take note of that. When he was married, his spouse, and his children, which looks great, but never stop there. If you can view the original image, always do that. So I'm going to click on View, and that opens it up in the same window. And here's a church register from Grace Lutheran Church in Aurora. And I've got some navigation buttons here that I can click on the arrow and get a little bit bigger, drag and click this to move it. And now you can see here that it gives Eric Gustav Falk living on Cedar Street in Aurora. It has his birthday. It has where he was born in Sweden, which is gold, his wife's name, and his 3 children, along with their birthdays. So once I found this, I'm grabbing that family group sheet, and I am going to fill out that with as much of this information as I can. This is good information. And then over here is a marriage record. So I've got a complete picture of the family so far. I did get a question about emailed links from sending the document when you're not in the library. Yes, you can view that from home. Thanks for the question there. You will open it up at your email at home and be able to view it there. Okay, back to our church record here. We've gotten a lot of good information about that. So I kind of wanted to give you my little tip on right-clicking and opening something in another tab, because now I can go back to that Find a Grave, and I can use my back button here to kind of follow my breadcrumbs there and take a look at maybe some more of these, which you would probably do. But since this is an introduction to Ancestry, I'm going to go back to the home page here so we can explore some more things. I told you that the census is a very good place to look. I think if you took the Genealogy 101, I might have even called this some of the low-hanging fruit. So I'm going to talk about that first, and I'm going to kind of do a deep dive into it so you can get an idea of the different kinds of things that you can find in the census, as well as how Ancestry shows that to you. So when I click in the census box here, this is the US Federal Census collection. But down at the bottom, it gives me links to the individual ones, which I could have used from the front page. So I might do that in the next example. But for here, we're going to stop. We're going to go to the 1940 census. And if you remember from our Genealogy 101 class, you start with the most recent and work your way back. And right now, the 1940 census is the most recent census that we have to search through. Although you're living in a wonderful year, because on April 1st, no fooling, the 1950 census will open up and become available to us too. So this presentation will be out of date in a couple of months. But for now, let's look at the 1940 census. It's important to know that a search box comes up and it's just going to search the 1940 census. So I'm going to put in what I know about my great-grandfather, his name. I now know when he was born, 1872, born in Sweden, and I'm just going to leave it at that. I know that he lived in Aurora, so I type in Aurora and choose Kane County isn't there, is it? So I'll do a little more typing and get Kane County here and click on that to use that. And then again, fill in his wife, Helen. It's important to remember when you're searching particular record collections like this, what is and isn't available to search in the collection. In a census, family members definitely could be in the record, so it's fine to put them in. So let's click on search, and it comes up with a Gustav E. Falk with a spouse named Helen in Aurora, Kane County, born about 1873 in Sweden. Everything about that is pretty correct except the birth year and the name. But one thing I want to tell you is that in genealogy, names are a moving target, so don't throw something out just because the name doesn't match completely. The E probably stands for Eric, and maybe Gustav was his first name in Sweden or whatever. Also, this 1873 could mean that he was born before the census was taken, so that's not going to be a deal breaker for us either. Now we have two choices here of things to look at. We could view the record, which I'll do. And that just kind of gives you, again, kind of what we saw in the Find a Grave and in the other church record as well, kind of an outline of what's here. And it gives you a link to click here for the actual census, which I'm going to do with my trick again, opening it in a new tab so I don't lose my place here. And when I click on this, the picture for the 1940 census comes up, and Ancestry has helpfully highlighted where my people are. Again, I'm going to use this navigation over here to make it bigger, and so we can read it. Okay, here he is, Mr. Gustav Falk, married to Helen in the 1940 census. It's a good idea to take a look at every piece of information, which I'm going to force you to do here. On the first column here is the name of the street that he lived on, Cedar, and he has an address is 408. Now Helen and Gustav are at 408. The next person down here is also at 408, but you'll notice that this O means that Eric Gustav owns his home, and the R here means that he's renting. So they must have been renting something at this address. I don't know if it was a 2-flat or if it was just rooms in the house. But anyway, they had the same address there. Let's go back to Eric and Helen and look at them a little closer. It gives their ages, the fact that they're married, what level of education they had, where they were born, and a little bit about employment, which they're not employed. So not too much information, but considering their age, 67 and 68, probably retired and living, hopefully, a good life. So that's what we can glean from that. I'm going to pop back to my 1940 census here, go back one spot, two, I guess. And actually, let me go all the way back to the beginning, and I'm going to show you how this works when I click on the 1930 census here. Then it takes me straight to the 1930 census. All right, let me type in Eric Falk again. The last set of information that I typed in was pretty good, so we're going to put in the same information again. Including his birth date. Now, he was not born in Aurora, he was born in Sweden. He lived in Aurora. Thank you for those of you who are yelling at me to get that figured out. And his spouse was Helen. I'm going to click on that. And here it comes again with Gustav E.C. Falk. He added another initial, it looks like. So I'm not going to look at the record this time. Let's go and look at the image directly. Here in the middle of the street, middle of the page, is Mr. Gustav Falk again with his wife Helen, and now we see two children. Remember, this is 10 years before the last one. So he has a son, Burton, who is my grandfather, and Adrian. his daughter, giving their ages. And at this point, there's a different question. The age at when Gustav and Helen were first married is 26. That brings me to a point that I do need to make, is that every census year had different questions. So that's why you want to look at each census, and I hope you'll see that by the end of this demonstration. Because of the different questions, you need to look at each possible census that the person would have lived in. Sliding over a little bit, this will talk about where they were born and where their parents were born, what their spoken languages. And then this column right here, it has to do with when they immigrated. This is another good piece of information that you can often get from the census that can help you find naturalization information. This tells me here that Eric Falk immigrated in 1890. And the NA here is an abbreviation for naturalized, which means he has gone through the naturalization process and is now a citizen. 57 years old, he's still working at this point. It says he's a machinist in a railroad shop. And a lot of these are, these codes don't mean a whole lot. I'm going to just zip over here up to this. I believe that this question asks, are you a veteran or did you fight in a war? This person did and was in World War I, it looks like, or maybe World War II. Well, he's 80, so he's probably fighting in World War I. So this is when you either have to go up to the top of the screen and zoom in on that so you can see it, or get one of the empty census forms so you know what all the questions are. In the 1930 census, my grandfather was an engineer on the railroad, not an engineer that drove the railroad, but the other kind of engineer. And his sister Adrian was not working. Maybe she was finishing up school. Okay, that was the 1930 census. Let's go back here and go back one screen and see what the family looks like in 1920. Again, the name, birth year. We're going to remember that he was born in Sweden this time and not Aurora. Lived in Aurora, or at least we think he did. Remember, it is possible that people would have moved around. So if if you type in something and don't get a response or don't find someone that don't find your ancestor, you can leave off one of these things, or maybe leave off something and add something else to find them in another place if they might have moved. Okay, now example, my Eric Falk is not showing up here. So I know, however, okay, that's kind of annoying, sorry about that, that he never moved out of Aurora. So this little button right here is an edit key. You see, it looks like a pencil. And instead of Eric, I'm going to put in his name, Gustav, because I did notice that he was using that name in a lot of the census. So let's try searching on that. And there he is, coming up with Gustav, Helen, living in Aurora, just like we expected. I also wanted to point out over here that besides using the edit button, you can be more specific or less specific about the search terms that you're using. For instance, when this is on the left-hand side, it's very broad. But if you want to, if you get too many results in your search, you can narrow this down and say, you know, I know he was in Kane County, so I'm going to limit it to that. Let's apply that and see what happens. So that will take us from the 32 that we had to just our one. So if you get too many results and the top ones are not any of what you're looking for, use your edit key and use the sliders here to be more specific on the things that you know or broaden out on the things that you don't know. Okay, let's take a look at the Falk family in 1920. Here they are down here. Again, living on Cedar Street, but not the same address. I don't know if that means that they moved or if street numbers changed or whatever. So that's just something to take note of if we want to look into that in the future. But here's Gustav, no Eric, so that's why it never came up, because his name Eric was not here. But here's Helen, Burton, Norma, and Adrian. This Norma is a new name for us. We look over here, it says that she's 17 years old. So that would have meant in the 1930 census, she was 27. And if she was not with her family in 1930, a good guess would be that maybe she got married that year. So write that down as something to follow up on. One more clue to look at. This again gives us the year that Eric came into the United States, naturalized, but this year in 1920 is telling us that he was naturalized in the year 1893. So one more piece of information that we didn't have before. And again, once we're looking for those naturalization records, those dates can help us a lot. Just going over here to look at the occupations, that Eric was a machinist in a railroad. His son Bert was a telephone operator on the railroad. Norma worked as a stenographer in a bag factory, and Adrian was not working. There's a fireman at the railroad who is a lodger. So again, they're renting out some rooms or something to a different person. Okay, let's go back and see what we can glean from the 1910 census. Did I forget to open that up in the new? I did. I forgot to open that up in the new window. So we're just going to follow our back arrows here to get to, hopefully, the main page where we can search 1910. Now, since we had a problem with Eric last time, I'm just going to go straight out and put Gustav as our first name that we're searching. Mr. Falk again, born 1872 in Sweden, lived in Aurora, Kane County, with Helen. Now, the 1910 census, or this example of it, has another example of how spelling, or not necessarily spelling, but indexing can be a problem sometimes. Look at Gustav's last name here is listed as Salk, S-A-L-K, which we know is absolutely not true. His wife Helen has her name spelled with 2 L's. But again, they're still in Kane County, the birth year, close enough. So let's take a look and just make sure that this is the same people that we're looking for. And I think that even from this instance, you can tell that this particular census taker had horrific handwriting. This is a census that you never want to see, because sometimes you yourself can't figure it out. Over on the right or on the left here, we can't really read the name of the street that they're on. You can see how they got Salk from that. It sure does look like an S there, but we know it's an F. So just bad handwriting, bad spelling for Helen. And here's Burton and Norma with no Adrian. So she had not been born yet. Speaking of children being born, I want to draw your attention to this column over here. One of the questions that they asked in the 1910 census was how many children you had and how many children had been born to you. In this case, the number is the same for Helen, 2 children born and 2 children living. But their next door neighbors had 2 children born, but only 1 child living. And the neighbors on the other side had 6 children born, only 5 were living. That's a big clue right there that something happened to one of their children. Stillbirth, early death, later death, you don't know. You just know that there's this discrepancy and something happened to one of the children. So again, a clue to follow up on. Again, there's natural or immigration information, the 1890 and that he was naturalized. Didn't ask that question about when he was naturalized. So that's the importance of looking at that 1920 census. At this point, he's working as a machinist in a factory, no longer at the railroad. Helen is dressmaking at home, and the 2 children are probably in school at ages 9 and 8, so don't have an occupation yet. You can kind of see how we're getting a picture of this family. Okay, we're going to look at one more. Thanks for your patience with this, but I hope you're finding this a useful exercise to go through. One more that we're going to look at is the 1900 census. And again, look at Gustav, born in 1872 in Sweden. He lived in Aurora. And was married to Helen. And here he is again with 2 F's on his name instead of just 1, Gustav and Helen C.W. Let's take a look at this image and see if we can find out anything else. We started out with Helen and Gustav at the end of their married life. Here we are at the beginning. They're living on Cedar Street, 246. So who knows what was going on with the mess that was the 1910 census. We were lucky to get what we did out of it, I think. The interesting thing about the 1900 census is that it gives the month as well as the year that the person was born. So if you didn't know this information, this gives you a much better clue about when the person was born. It also lists their marital status and says how many years they had been married. So if we didn't know the marriage date, we could guess that it was about 1898. And here again, they're asking the question about number of children born and living. And there are no children with them now, but it says there was 1 born. So I don't know how to answer that for this couple. I don't know anything about a child who died, but could have been a stillborn, something like that. And then here again, the date of immigration, and you'll notice it's 1890. That has remained the same. Sometimes with a person's memory, that could change, but that's been pretty steady. So we can be pretty certain of that, I think. He's been in the country for 10 years, has been naturalized, and is working as a machinist. We don't know where. So to sum it up, I hope you've enjoyed this little exercise and dive into the census. You can see how you can get a lot of clues from the census, especially by starting with the most recent, working your way back. If we were going to go forward, I would look for Norma married in the 1930 and 40 census. And see if I could find Adrian and Burton in the 1940 census. Lots going on there. And again, other places to look, like the immigration and the naturalization information. So again, you can tell I love the census. It's a great place to start. It's a lot of low-hanging good fruit there. And I just encourage you to search every single census that your ancestor would have been in. So speaking of immigration and naturalization, let's take a little look in this box here and do some searching for immigration. Since the early records talked about Gustav instead of Eric, I'm going to use that name as I search here and search for his name. We know he was born again in 1872. He was born in Sweden and he arrived in 1890. So when I click on search, we'll see what that gives us. The first couple ones come from Texas, naturalization records, but this fourth one down here is from New York, arriving passenger and crew lists, has an Eric G. Falk. I don't know why he's Eric when he was Gustav before, but see these names, like I said, it's a moving target. Birth is about 1872 and he arrived in 1890 in New York. So that sounds good. I'm going to click on that to get us to view the passenger list. Also want to point out that you could get an image of the ship. The name here is City of Berlin. Let's just take a quick look at that in another tab. Can you imagine going across the ocean on a ship like that? It's certainly not like the ocean liners we have today. And even though there's one smokestack there, but several sails, I don't know. It's not a very good picture. It's not good resolution, but it gives you an idea of what that was looking like. Okay, Eric, what can you tell us about when you came here? Let's view this passenger list. Not a whole lot. Here he is, right here, Eric G. Falk, 18 years old when he came over, and a lot of the same information for everybody else that he was on the boat with. A laborer, male, coming from Sweden. I can't read the rest of that. I think it says that he left from London, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But these early immigration records, this is 1890, just did not have a whole lot of information on them. So if you have people who came later, I'll give you one example of that. But the later your immigrant came, the more information there will be on the passenger list. I believe it was in 1916 that the federal, or maybe 1906, that the federal government took over immigration and keeping track of all the people who were coming in. And so at that point, the records were a lot more detailed. Let me go back here. Oops. And to search in the immigration records. I'm going to go directly to this data collection over here. Another thing that Ancestry does, besides giving you the hints of records, it gives you individual data collections or record collections, like the specific one that we found Eric Graff in, and other ones in addition to that. If you're looking for naturalization information, this passport applications is a good one to start with, as well as the naturalization records. We aren't going to go into those, but I want to point those out to you. When you click on the immigration and naturalization box there, these are two record groups that you will want to look into. I want to go into here, though, the New York passenger list, and just show you what a slightly later passenger list would look like. This is for a different great-grandfather who was also born in Sweden, and he arrived in 1899. This is him right here. Now, when I look at the passenger list here, it's handwritten, but you can see that there's a lot more information. Even later, this information would be all typed, so it's beautiful to read. My person is listed here. Per Hansen was 23 when he came over. It gives me a little bit of information about where he came from in Malmo in Sweden. This was the clue that nailed it for me, that he was going to Princeton, Illinois, which is where my father's family is from. So I knew that had to be him. He came with $5 in his pocket, and he was going to see his uncle, Carl Pearson, in Princeton. So again, a lot of good information there. I think if you were my Genealogy 101, you might have seen an example of a typed passenger list that was 2 pages, and you could tell that by the title of up at the top here, which was cut in half. So you could tell that there was another page with the second half. This has one title at the top of the page, so I can be certain that this is only 1 page. There was something else that I wanted to mention to you, more having to do with Eric than this person, but you can tell, even though he was from Sweden, his departure port was from Liverpool. It's good to do a little bit of research about the country that your ancestors came from and how they might have gotten here. When I did that research, I found out that people from Sweden would often go to Hull, England, which is on the west side of England, get off the boat there, take a train across England to the east side in Liverpool, and then board another boat that would take them to the United States. It took a little longer, but it was cheaper, and it was kind of a package deal. So I don't know about other countries, but it's good to do some research like that to find out about that too. Okay, let's take a look. We're going to go up here back to the home page, and I want to look at the new collections section. No, sorry, getting ahead of myself here. We're going to go down to the quick links at the bottom and take a look at city directories. City directories are one of those things that might not tell you any of that birth, death, marriage information, but they can fill in the gaps and kind of flesh out who your ancestor was. The city and area directories is kind of the umbrella name for these groups. And then over here on the right, you can see that there are directories from not only the United States, but the UK and Canada, as well as Sydney and New South Wales. So there's definitely an international flavor here. But let's take a look at these US city directories. And there are 2 ways that you can go about searching. You can fill in with the search box here, which is fine. But the way I like to use these is by browsing the collection. this is a good skill set to have to know how to browse a collection. So that's why we're going to talk about it here. And by doing so, it kind of walks you through how you're going to do this. You're going to pick your state, which in my case is Illinois. We're going to pick a county. Could you guess that it would be Kane? And the year, that's not right. It's not. Let me see if there is another Kane listed. This is what every presenter is afraid is going to happen, is what they had practiced doesn't come out right. Let me just go back and make sure I'm looking at the right thing. Okay, city directories. If anybody can see what I'm doing wrong, tell me. I'm in Illinois. I don't know why it's saying Kane County instead of Kane. But I don't want to look at an 1897 one, so I'm going off. I'm working without a net here, guys. We're going to go to Bureau County, and that's not there. Oh, here, that's why. Aurora. We want to look at Aurora, not the county. Think about it. It's a city directory. We want to look at the city. Okay, got it. And let's take the year 1910, and we will look at the Aurora City Directory for 1910. We're going to look for Eric in the 1910 City Directory. Just to give you a little bit of orientation to what we're looking at here. This is a microfilm, and you can see down here at the bottom of the page what the microfilm would look like. They've got 2 pages, except for the first page, they've got 2 pages on each screen. And if you click on this, you can kind of go 2 pages by 2 pages. One thing about the city directories, there's a lot of things that I like about city directories. You'll have pictures of places, businesses, and sometimes even a little write-up about what's going on in the city. There's usually some kind of index that will give you how to find the names, which here's the alphabetical list of names on page 29. Let's have a page number on it. Word of warning that these pages do not match up with what is given here as a page number, because these are frame numbers, not page numbers. Well, I want to look into this alphabetical list of names, but I do not want to page through here, 29 pages or more to get to the alphabetical list. Plus, once I get to the alphabetical list, I'm just going to try and share my logic of reasoning out here. I don't want to go page by page by page until I get to the F's. So I've got 266 pages here. Let me just, what I can do is type in a number here, like 100, and click go, and it will take me to frame 100 of this. Now I'm missing a lot because of these film strips down here. So I'm going to click in this little X and make that go away. So now we can see a lot more, but we're on the K's. Just a second. Okay. So I need to go back a little bit, and this is where the browsing and just a little bit of guesswork comes in, but for some odd reason, I find this kind of entertaining. What page would it be on? Well, it's 429 and or after 29 and before page 100. Let's try page 75, see where that gets us. That gets us to the G's, which is a lot closer, but we're still not there in the F's. Maybe I'll just go back about 10 more pages to page 65, which gets me to FE, but not FA. So at this point, I will just back page 1, and here we are at the FAs. And for some reason, Gustav and his wife Helen have a mark by their name. I don't know why. Anyway, here they are listed in the city directories. Gustav and his wife, he's a machinist at a place called Automatic, and they live at 93 Prairie. The R means that's their residence. So Prairie, I can't remember, was it 1910 that was the bad writing, or 1920? Maybe this would explain some of that bad writing that we had in the census. So that gives us, tells me where he is working, at a place called Automatic. I had to do a little bit of looking, but I wanted to show you that on page 21 of this, I'm skipping all the digging research that I had to do to find this out. Excuse me. Sorry, my Zoom is covering up a picture here. Oops, I lost it. Excuse me, guys. I wanted to show you one more thing, but now I'm not. Maybe this is time to end. Anyway, one of the things that I was able to find in this was a listing for, let me go back to page 21. Because it wasn't called Automatic, it was called Aurora Automatic. And you probably saw this. I'm sorry that I didn't. Aurora Automatic Machinery Company talks, gives who all the people were who worked there, the vice president, the secretary, the general manager, but it also tells you that they're designers and manufacturers of the war motorcycles and component parts of cycles and motor vehicles. So now I know what he was a machinist on, kind of working on motorcycle machinery. Fills in a few little more gaps there. So don't overlook the city directories in your family history research on Ancestry. And again, just like the census, you should try to look your family up in every city directory that's available to you. It's not a complete collection on Ancestry, but that's another way to tell how and where someone might have moved. If they moved within a city, you can find those different addresses. Now I want to go to the new collections section up here. I mentioned this at the beginning. We're going to dive into it a little bit and see what this is all about. Clicking on that brings me to something called the card catalog, which let me just go back here to this search button. When I hover over that or click on it, I think I mentioned that you can get to several of the different categories here, but also to the card catalog, which is the same thing as looking at these new collections. And it's a searchable listing of all the record collections. Now, I think the reason that they call it new collections is because whenever they add a collection to it, to Ancestry Library Edition, they put it in here and list it as new. So some of the new things that they've added are things from Australia, New Zealand, portraits and photographs from the UK, could be interesting. And over here on the right, it tells you what general collection they're listed in, as well as how many records were added or are in that collection. So there's 14,000 record tax and financial records from South Australia. Not a whole heck of a lot. But down here in the Wisconsin death records, there's almost 2 million of them. So that's something that wasn't there before. And does it tell me when this was added? I thought if I hovered over it a little bit, it would tell me when it was at. Whoops, there it was and it disappeared. Did you see that? Look closely. Anyway, sometimes you can get it to stay and see when it was added. Now, in addition to adding records, they update records. And by using this drop-down menu, you can use date updated and see when things were updated. For instance, some birth, marriage, and death records from Massachusetts were added recently. I wish that wouldn't go away because I'd like to be able to see how many they added. I'm guessing this is the total number of records that are in the Massachusetts birth, marriage, and death, but maybe not. Maybe they added 3 million to them. Anyway, this is a good thing to make a habit of stopping into every once in a while to see what's new. Because say you had Wisconsin people, which I do, so I'm going to be coming back to this. Good to see what records were added. Iowa too, look at that. Iowa death records, almost 3 million there. I don't know why they have, oh yes, 16 million notary records from Quebec. Now, not only can you see when things were updated and added, you can look by record count if you want to see like what the biggest record collections are, which is really not anything surprising there. But you can also search either by title or by keywords. And just as an example, did you know that you can look at Sears catalogs on Ancestry.com. When I click on the name of the record collection, and you can see this is hidden in something called newspapers and publications. So you might not think to look in there for this, but knowing that they have Sears catalogs now, you can go to the card catalog, search by the keyword, and bring it up there. Again, you could look for something specific if you wanted to, you know, look at women's clothing or whatever, or you can choose a year. Remember how you can pick a year, and this says, I think sometimes it has fall or spring. Here's the catalog number, whatever that means, and this will bring up a picture of the catalog that I think is probably from the Sears company, maybe the Sears archives. And by going page by page, you can look through the catalog. This is really cool because it's in color. And maybe just kind of, we'll pick a random page here and see what's on it. Roofing paint, radiator enamel, so different kinds of paints. You know, they said you could get just about anything in the Sears catalog. So if you're doing research on your family from a certain year and wanted to know, you know, what do you think they were looking at for toys for the kids or whatever, this is kind of a fun thing to do that, putting the flesh on the bones and fleshing them out more as people instead of just names and dates on the page. All right, let's go back to the home page. I'm not going to go through all of these boxes because I think, well, I do want to go through the military. I'm going to leave the vital records because that's kind of self-explanatory, but military records can be a little bit more interesting. I don't have, well, I hardly have anybody in my family that served in the military, but that doesn't mean that my ancestor is in there. Here's my grandfather, the son of that Per Hansen that I searched earlier, and I can tell you later about name changes if you want to know about that, but that was a big one. Okay, Princeton and Bureau County. in Illinois. Actually, he wasn't born in Princeton, he was born in California, I think. So let's just make this Illinois and lived in Princeton. So bringing up this, because he's my grandfather, I know that this third one is him, that's my grandmother. World War II draft cards for young men. He wasn't that young, he was probably about 35. Anyway, again, here's kind of the same thing that we've seen before, an overview of what's on this piece of information, but we always want to look at the original record if we can. So I'm going to click on that, and that will show me the draft registration card that was filled out in 1940 when he had to register for the draft. Tells where he was born, gives his birthday, the name of the person who will always know your address. Sometimes it's a parent. In this case, Harry was married, so it's his wife. It gives his address, tells where he was working and the address of that, and then his signature, which I always think is cool to find your ancestor's signature. This I happen to know, or you could see here, see this little word here that says over, that means there's more information. So let's go to the next page. I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller, and it gives a description of the registrant. So race, eye and hair color, what the complexion was like, how tall he was and how much he weighed. Also, the date that he registered. So this was a census year, so that doesn't add too much. But if he had registered in 41 or 42, that would have given me just one more piece of information to add to what I know about him. He was never called up, but he filled out a draft card. I wanted to show you another piece of military information that I knew I had found this information on someone, but it didn't come up right away. So I'm going to go back to, well, okay, sorry. Let me go back one more. I'm going to put in the name of Emil Pearson, who was born in 1883 in Sweden. And after doing a little research on him, I know he died in 1951. And when I search him that way, this is him here, Emil P. Pearson, which comes up with a lot of military registers. He was kind of a career Army man. So when you click on one of these, I won't, but you can kind of see the image there. It's a printed book and gives all kinds of information about different places that he served. But one of the things that was not coming up that I wanted to show you is something called headstone applications for military veterans. If we were in person, I would say, now, how do you think I could find that record again in the headstone applications for military veterans? And one of you would no doubt suggest going to the card catalog and searching that as a keyword, which of course we would do. Look at headstone applications. And that brings up the U.S. headstone applications for military veterans. There's one record collection. Now, when I put in Emil's name here, and his birth and death, surprisingly, it brings up two. But this is him here, Emil Pearson. Let's take a look at this record. This is an application for someone who is in the military to get a military headstone or marker. And it has a lot of great information about him from a military standpoint. It tells me when he enlisted, his serial number, which was one of those three things that you are only supposed to give out, right? Name, rank, and serial number. His discharge date, when he was born, when he died, what cemetery he's in, the regiment or organization that he was in, and where the cemetery is located. So this isn't particularly current. I looked up someone more recent who had died in 2000, and I didn't see them here, but for World War II people, especially whose a lot of military records are not around, this is a good record collection to keep in mind. U.S. headstone applications. Okay, I wanted to just mention briefly the newspaper obituaries, because obituaries are something that we love to find. And you might think that this would be a great possible source for you. I want to caution you and also demonstrate one other thing about library edition. At the bottom of every record collection is collection information, which kind of tells you what's in that collection or maybe where it came from. This tells you about, how great obituaries are. Being able to research online databases, long lost relatives, small town dailies. One of them that I had noticed was, it's the US obituary collection right here that is only recent obituaries from hundreds of newspapers. Let me go back to that and look at that. This is newspapers from all over the place, which possibly has some local newspapers, but the obituary collection, which you might think would have just obituaries, is only from online sources. So it's going to be more current, new obituaries. So we just wanted you to be aware of that. Let me check my time here. We're getting along. I'm going to skip the yearbook section, but let me just go back and show you where that is. Schools, directories, and church histories. Click on that and look here in the US school yearbooks. I found my dad's high school yearbook the year he graduated with his whole commencement program in there, along with his senior picture and a list of everything he did. I've also found my grandmother in there. So some of them, as you can see, go back to 1900. Take a look at those school yearbooks, because that's another great source of information to kind of flesh that person out. But this is something that I want to make sure that you know about. Remember when we went to that search, the begin searching page, we kind of focused on this search box right here, completely overlooking the explore by location function down here. And I do want you to know about that too, because there are some things in here that you might not have found otherwise that could be very important. Explore by location means just what it says, that you can pick a state and search in that. For instance, I'm going to do South Carolina or South Dakota. It has 44 record sets in here from South Dakota, and lists them all here for you, from a brief history of South Dakota, which sounds like a book, to South Dakota marriages, South Dakota state census, and even the World War II draft registration. So even though it says South Dakota, it's also pulling in things that cover the whole country, but that of course included South Dakota in them. One way to get a better handle on this is to click on this View All South Dakota Research Options. And what that does is kind of categorize all those different data collections into categories like a census or birth, marriage, and death, military, and immigration. So you can find those records that are specific to that state and location. You might not have been aware that the states took their own censuses also, usually in the half between the 10-year census. Most often when states were trying to gain statehood, although South Dakota did this up until 1945. So I highly recommend that, for nothing else than checking to see if there's a census, but also, again, for the vital records, sometimes the state section is the way to go. So that had what, 44? Just going to backtrack a little bit here, and that's not what I wanted to do. Show you as a comparison the state of Illinois, which has 439 different kind of data collections. So a few more, especially as you scroll down, there are court, land, wills, and financial databases, directories for railroad employees, that kind of thing. So don't forget about that geographic search in the main search box there, because that can lead you to a few bits of information that you might not have otherwise seen. Time for a sip of water. Okay, is your brain spinning yet? We have certainly covered a lot of information. I'm going to see if I can go back to my, yes, little PowerPoint presentation here and wrap it up a bit and show you how you can learn more and stay connected with genealogy at Cook Library. I mentioned a few more programs in the Genealogy Academy series, and this is what they are. We'll have one a month for the next 3 months. In March, we'll be talking about Family Search, which is a free database, and I would compare it and say it's just as important as Ancestry. So with a whole different set of types of records and different ways of searching. So that's in March. In April, we'll talk about free genealogy websites, because genealogy can be an expensive habit. So the more we can get for free, the better. And in May, we'll talk about newspapers, which besides Census is another one of my favorite types of records. And that'll be in May. These are all open for registration now on the library's website under the Events tab. Also, we have an ongoing networking group called the Genealogy Networking Group, which anyone is invited to join. It's just what it says. It's a networking group where we meet together on the first Thursday of every month at 7 o'clock. And we kind of share what we're researching. Every once in a while, we usually all have a something new to share, or maybe kind of dive into one of the library's databases. Our next one coming up in March, we're going to kind of have a show and tell of different family heirlooms or family documents or something that we found. So that's always a little bit of fun. This program is hybrid, so it's in person or on Zoom, whichever way you feel comfortable attending, we can accommodate you. So I hope you'll consider joining us for that. The people who come are just like you, interested in genealogy, enthusiastic about learning more and sharing what you've found. So actually, when we met in February, one of our members found something for another member who had been looking for this information for a long time. So we kind of help each other. So I look forward to having you join us for that. Also, we have two just kind of on their own programs. Later in March, we have a program on identifying old family photographs. And on April 1st, we have Genealogy After Hours, which we haven't been able to do for quite a while, but this is a fun after hours program that people have enjoyed in the past. And I think that we're at a point now where we can do this safely. It's on April 1st, which is a Friday. It starts at 6 o'clock when the library closes and goes until 10 o'clock or however long you can last. Everybody gets their own computer, or you can bring your own laptop. You can use the library's databases. You can print for free. Once somebody just brought all her pictures and spread them out on a couple tables and used that time to organize. So whatever you need to get done, Genealogy After Hours is for you. That's Friday, April 1st. And you may remember that that is the day that the 1950 census is going to be released. So we might have some fun trying to pull up some 1950 census information and see what we can find there. Finally, last but certainly not least, I want to encourage you to stay connected with our genealogy and what's going on. We have a genealogy e-newsletter that I send out every month. If you go to the genealogy website, which is cooklib.org/genealogy, down at the very bottom of the page is a link to sign up for the genealogy e-newsletter. This usually includes information about upcoming programs at other libraries and societies, and a few book recommendations, a little bit of genealogy tidbits that might be helpful to you. So I encourage you to sign up for that as well. Well, everybody, we have spent a quick almost hour and a half going through Ancestry Library Edition. I hope this has been helpful to you. I'm going to stop the recording now and open it up to any questions.